The bass line of the music vibrating through the festival grounds wasn't just sound. It was a physical hammer striking the fragile glass wall I'd built around my sanity. The neon lights, meant to dazzle and distract, only served to illuminate the sharp, jagged edges of my 7 years of trauma recovery. 5 months. 5 months of Ethan. My brilliant, kind, utterly devoted Ethan. 14 years we'd been on the fringes of each other's lives, but these past 5 months had been the clean, exclusive chapter one had fought, bled, and paid thousands in therapy to earn. I was not just better, I was finally whole. I was ready to live the dream I had postponed, a stable, monogamous love that honored my sacrifice. And then I saw her, across the pulsating wave of the crowd, under the dizzying strobe of the main stage, a figure of stunning, almost agonizing grace. Serafina. The name was a poison on my tongue. She moved with an unsettling, inherent superiority, every gesture a calculated performance of beauty. She was talking to a stage manager, her new boyfriend, a perfectly decent man. I'm told nowhere in sight. Her long, black hair cascaded over her shoulders, catching the light like liquid obsidian. Her beauty was a weapon, and she knew exactly how to wield it. Ethan had loved her with a tragic, self-destructive intensity, a love that warped his judgment and kept him tethered to her endless betrayals. She was his first serious relationship, the one who took his virginity, the perfect trophy he couldn't let go of, even when she finally destroyed him. She paused. It was a microscopic delay, a flick of time no one else noticed. She turned her head, and her eyes, cold and blue as glacial ice, locked onto mine across the teeming crowd. The noise of the festival collapsed into a tight, sickening silence in my ears. Her lips, perfect and painted, curved into a smile that lacked all warmth. It wasn't hostile, wasn't friendly. It was a single, chilling, utterly calculated curve. A smile that said, "I see you. And I remember every single second of the pathetic arrangement you had with my man." It was a subtle, invisible declaration of war. The floor didn't just tilt, it vanished. A crushing wave of heat and nausea washed over me, the unmistakable physical signature of a full-blown panic attack. It was the trauma snapping back into my brain, a 7-year-old wound ripped open in an instant. The ghost of my past wasn't just lurking in my subconscious. She was standing right there, framed in the dazzling, manipulative light of the festival, ready to perform a psychological hit job. My hands began to shake uncontrollably, and I had to grip the railing to stay upright. This festival, this perfect job, this idyllic relationship, all of it was built on the shaky foundation of a tragic circumstance. Ethan was working for her now, on the accounting side. A second job he took to cover a crushing financial and emotional hit. The tragic situation that brought us back together just 5 months ago was his near breakdown. A close call with an overdose after a year of spiraling solitude. I'd found him broken, scared, and realized the love I'd harbored for him during our doomed FWB arrangement years ago was still fiercely alive. Our new beginning felt urgent, a frantic rescue mission from the ruins of 2 lives. Years ago, before the therapy, before the healing, Ethan and I had been desperate people clinging to a shipwreck. We were FWB, a twisted, temporary sanctuary from the carnage of our own open relationships. My cheating ex, the one who consistently cheated on me, had demanded I take a lover so he could claim it was a loyalty test. I had begged and begged for it to be fair, for me to have that same freedom, just to regain a sliver of control. Ethan's ex, Serafina, had used her open relationship status to keep him on a string while she ran back to her ex-husband. We were two puppets dancing in the dark, comparing our identical scars. We slept together, not out of passion, but out of a shared, toxic sense of being disposable. We were both convinced we were unworthy of real love. I finally snapped out of my trauma-induced trance when Ethan appeared, his hand on my lower back, his smile oblivious to the psychic war being waged inches away. "Hey, you okay? You look like you just saw a ghost." I forced a smile that felt brittle, a mask made of cracked porcelain. Just a bit overwhelmed by the crowd. "The lights are intense." He kissed my forehead, a gesture of ownership and security. But the moment was tainted. I felt Serafina's eyes on us, heavy and mocking, confirming that I wasn't imagining her influence. The fact that she was working so closely with the man she had betrayed for years, the one man who had loved her completely, felt less like a coincidence and more like a carefully laid trap. Later that night, as we were packing up the car, the conversation from the night before resurfaced, slicing through my false calm. The one where I admitted, with raw vulnerability, "I didn't think you would leave her for me back then, Ethan. She was toxic, yes, but she was gorgeous, and you truly and deeply loved her." And his response, "Yeah, she has lots of issues." That one sentence. It wasn't relief. It was a cold splash of reality. It didn't sound like "I wanted to ask you out," or "I thought about it." It sounded like I stuck with the broken trophy until she finally broke me. He hadn't fought for me because the misery of Serafina was familiar, and the challenge of me was too terrifying. The lie I told myself, that I was the one who got away, collapsed, replaced by the chilling truth. I was just the convenient rebound, the one in the right place at the right time. I was the lifeboat, not the prize. And now, Serafina was back, a live-action reminder of the woman he truly desired, the one he only left when she finally broke him. This wasn't a random coincidence. Serafina never did anything without a reason. The ex was acting weird. This was deliberate. My fingers, still trembling from the panic, brushed the console of Ethan's car, knocking loose a small, cheap, burner phone I'd never seen before. It wasn't his usual sleek device. It was old, scratched, and had only one unsent text message on the screen, heavily encrypted with symbols I didn't recognize. A thought, cold and absolute, slammed into me. Serafina. The ghost wasn't in my head. She was in his pocket. And she was using him for something dark. The burner phone in my hands felt heavy, not with cheap plastic, but with the dense weight of a lie. Ethan was sleeping soundly in the next room, oblivious to the sick, frantic energy coursing through me. I sat huddled in the kitchen, the blue light of the tiny screen reflecting the anxiety in my eyes. This wasn't just a betrayal of trust. It felt like a deliberate intrusion into the hard-won clarity of my mind. I had to know. My past in digital media a lifetime ago, before I quit the music and modeling career to heal, had given me a dangerous skill set. I recognized the obscure, archaic cipher. It was a simple substitution key, but one only old-school media pirates or serious manipulators would bother with. Hours passed, my heart drumming against my ribs in a frantic, uneven rhythm. When the encryption finally cracked, the text wasn't a sweet message, wasn't a casual check-in. It was a single, terrifying, cryptic line, meeting at the vault. 3 a.m. Bring the ledger. This can't wait. The sender was listed only as K. The vault. That was the internal slang for the heavily secured, locked storage room at the festival's headquarters. The one only high-level staff, like Serafina, and the accounting team, like Ethan, had access to. Suddenly, Ethan's second job wasn't just a way to pay off a tragic financial hit. It was a cover. Of vulnerability. Serafina, the master manipulator, hadn't re-entered his life through love, she'd done it through leverage. She found his weakest point, his need to be useful, his financial desperation, and she exploited it with surgical precision. My suspicion immediately escalated into full-blown, gut-churning paranoia. I couldn't trust my own mind. That was the lasting damage of my trauma. So I sought concrete proof. I checked his recent movements on a shared location app we used for safety. 2 nights ago, he had been at the festival grounds until 3:30 a.m., an absence he'd blamed on a server issue. I had believed him instantly, effortlessly, because our new love was supposed to be perfect. Now, the lie was a gaping hole in my reality. Serafina hadn't just been weird at the festival. She'd been actively rebuilding her control over him, using him as a key to her vault. Every shared laugh, every quiet evening, every moment of connection was now filtered through the sickening knowledge that she was using my perfect boyfriend as a disposable pawn in some kind of high-stakes game, a game he might not even realize he was playing. I replayed the conversation from the night before, analyzing every syllable. My confession that I didn't think he'd leave her for me. His dismissive response, "Yeah, she has lots of issues." That wasn't a defense of me. It was a deeply ingrained defense of her. It wasn't about her flaws. It was about his own weakness. He had chosen the familiar, toxic stability of Serafina over the terrifying, unknown possibility of real love with me. His comment suddenly sounded like a subtle admission that his love for her was a deeper, more primal thing than his love for me, the kind of soul-deep attachment that doesn't just fade. The next day at the festival, the air felt charged, toxic. My focus was gone. I approached Serafina's station, pretending to check on a music equipment manifest. She was alone, reviewing papers with an unsettling calmness that felt completely staged. "Hard at work, Serafina," I said, my voice deliberately flat, testing her. She looked up, her blue eyes colder than glass, registering my presence with the barest flicker of recognition. "Someone has to be, Anya," she purred, her tone saccharine and patronizing. "The festival accounting is a mess. Ethan's been doing his best, but he gets distracted easily. You know how men are when they fall in love." Then came the calculated strike. She leaned forward, lowering her voice to a chilling whisper that felt intended only for my wounded subconscious. "Some scars never truly heal, do they, Anya? You carry the past like a heavy cloak." My breath hitched. That phrase, "some scars never truly heal," was not a common idiom. It was the exact phrase my cheating ex had used to justify our open relationship, telling me the trauma of his betrayal meant I was damaged goods and could never have a normal, monogamous relationship again. It was a phrase meant to keep me small, unworthy, and eternally dependent on him. How could Serafina know that? Unless she and my ex had communicated, had compared notes on their shared victim, trading psychological tactics to ensure their puppets stayed on their strings. I realized the terrifying truth. Serafina wasn't just beautiful. She was a predator who meticulously studied her prey. She hadn't just accidentally crossed paths with Ethan. She had engineered this job, this closeness, using him as a pawn to access something in the vault, and using her psychological mastery to dismantle my new relationship from the inside out. My self-doubt was her greatest weapon, and she was sharpening it right in front of me. The choice was clear. I could either spiral into my old trauma, let her subtle psychological warfare win, and watch my new life burn, or I could fight back. I had to expose whatever sinister game she was playing with the vault and the ledger. I had to find a secret so destructive, so massive, that it would completely and irrevocably remove her from Ethan's life and his mind. I had to commit to the impossible task, publicly destroy Serafina, using only a cryptic text and my own shattered intuition, before she destroyed my future and the man I loved. I would no longer be the victim waiting for permission to be happy. Later that night, the burner phone buzzed once more on the table. A reminder for a meeting I knew I shouldn't be seeing. The text, vault entrance, 3 a.m. Don't be late. I knew what I had to do. I had to go to the vault, and I had to be alone. I had to face the ghost in his pocket, even if it meant risking everything, including my carefully reconstructed sanity. The clock on my phone read 2:54 a.m. The air in my apartment was thick and cold, mirroring the fear that had rooted itself deep in my chest. Ethan was still asleep, his presence in the next room a cruel reminder of the trust one was about to violate. I slipped out, the burner phone clutched in my hand, its silent notification my only guide. The festival grounds at 3 a.m. were a labyrinth of shadows and silence, a stark contrast to the earlier chaotic brilliance. I moved like a ghost, using my knowledge of the backstage areas to navigate toward the vault, a plain, reinforced steel door tucked away in the least used part of the administrative building. I approached slowly, adrenaline flooding my system. I didn't have to break in. I just had to watch. Tucked behind a stack of unused stage trusses, I waited. The seconds stretched into agonizing minutes. Then, the sound of a key in the lock. Serafina appeared, but she wasn't alone. She was meeting with a shadowy figure, a man in a cheap, dark suit I didn't recognize. He wasn't her current boyfriend. He was older, more intense, his face drawn with stress. They spoke in hushed, urgent tones. I couldn't make out the words, but the body language was clear. Serafina was in control, her posture radiating cold confidence, while the man was desperate, pleading. I watched as Serafina exchanged a small, heavy package. It looked like a secure USB drive or a tiny hard wallet, for a thick, worn manila envelope that she immediately tucked into her expensive designer bag. The exchange was quick, illicit, and damning. This wasn't a casual chat between exes. It was a transaction, a piece of a far larger, darker puzzle. They parted ways, the shadowy man vanishing into the night first, Serafina following minutes later. I stayed frozen, my mind reeling. What had I just witnessed? It felt like money laundering, corporate espionage, something far more serious than a simple ex-girlfriend trying to reclaim her man. When I finally got back to my apartment, I couldn't keep the secret. The pressure was too immense. I woke Ethan, the burner phone in my trembling hand. "We need to talk," I whispered, the words shaking. Ethan's eyes widened, moving instantly to the unfamiliar device. His initial confusion hardened into immediate defensiveness. "Where did you get that?" "Anya, you went through my things." "I found it in your car," I countered, the accusation heavy in my voice. "It was hidden. It has coded messages about a meeting at the vault at 3 a.m. Serafina was there. With another man. She passed him a package. His face paled, not with guilt, but with a deep, frustrated weariness. "It's not what you think," he sighed, running a hand over his face. "Yes, it's from Serafina. She gave it to me right after we started dating. She was trying to get me to help her with a legal issue, a messy audit related to her past business. She knew I had access to some historical records at the festival. I told her no. I told her I was done. Then why keep the phone? Why not tell me?" My voice was rising, shrill with panic. "Why were you at the festival until 3:30 a.m. 2 nights ago?" Ethan looked genuinely hurt. the defense breaking into raw exhaustion. I was there that night because she sent me a barrage of texts from this damn phone about how her life was falling apart. I went to the festival, not the vault, but the parking lot, to give the phone back and tell her to stop contacting me. I didn't tell you because I knew this would happen. I knew your trauma would turn one misplaced object into a full-blown conspiracy. I kept it to avoid drama, Anya, because I didn't want to ruin our 5 perfect months. He threw up his hands, the fight draining out of him. I broke up with her. I chose you. But I am not going to be constantly scrutinized because a part of your past trauma won't let you trust me. I did the work in therapy, and I expect you to trust the man you fell in love with. Then came the crushing ultimatum, the brutal realization that my paranoia had pushed him to his breaking point. He looked me in the eye, his gaze steady but utterly devoid of warmth. Trust me completely and stop this investigation right now, or this is over. Your trauma can't rule my life, and it certainly won't rule ours. The air in the room seemed to shatter. I felt completely isolated, cornered by my own history. My desperate act to protect my relationship had just placed the final nail in its coffin. I was back in that space of profound loneliness, terrified of repeating my past betrayal. But this time, the betrayal was my own fault. Just as the despair settled over me, my personal phone vibrated, a text from an unknown number. My blood ran cold. The message was short, brutal, and utterly terrifying. Stay away from the vault, Anya. Stay out of Serafina's business. You'll wish you stayed with your cheating ex. The message wasn't from Serafina. It was from the shadowy man. Someone else knew about me. Someone else was watching. And now, they had issued a threat that used my deepest, most agonizing wound as leverage. I was no longer just fighting for my relationship. I was fighting for my safety. The text message, "Stay away from the vault, Anya. You'll wish you stayed with your cheating ex," pulsed on my screen, like a malignant heartbeat. It wasn't just a threat of physical harm. It was a deep psychological strike, aimed at the one place I was most vulnerable. Serafina wasn't working alone. She was a chessmaster, and I was dangerously exposed. The panic that had plagued me for days solidified into cold, hard resolve. I wasn't just fighting an ex-girlfriend anymore. I was fighting a crime, and my boyfriend was standing directly in its crosshairs. I had to return to the festival grounds, but not as a spy. I needed an ally. I used the burner phone to send a carefully worded, anonymous text to the only other person who knew about the vault meeting, the shadowy man. I requested a meeting, promising information about Serafina's vulnerability. He met me an hour later in a deserted service alley, his face a mask of anxiety and desperation. He introduced himself as Marcus, a disgraced former director of festival operations. "Serafina isn't just messing with your boyfriend," Marcus hissed, his voice raw. "She's running a large-scale embezzlement and insurance fraud scheme through the festival's finances. She's been skimming profits, double-billing sponsors, and creating fake vendor accounts for years. She's a professional predator." The pieces slammed into place. Ethan's second job in accounting wasn't just a way to pay off a financial hit. Serafina had engineered it, specifically needing his access and his desperately quiet compliance. She needed a scapegoat with clean hands and a vulnerable history. She was using Ethan's love for her, his sense of loyalty, and his financial need as cover. Marcus admitted he was complicit, having created some of the initial fake accounts. He had fragmented proof, bank statements, internal memos, but Serafina had the digital ledger, the ironclad evidence that documented the entire scheme, hidden in the vault. If they exposed her without that ledger, She would simply use her superior legal team to frame both him and Ethan, twisting the evidence to make them look like the masterminds. She's already setting the trap, Marcus said, his eyes darting nervously. She knows you're sniffing around. We need that ledger, Anya. It's the only thing that can save Ethan's career and keep us both out of jail. If we fail, Serafina walks free, and your boyfriend takes the full, catastrophic fall for her crime. The stakes were no longer emotional. They were life or death. My anxiety vanished, replaced by a surge of furious determination. I chose to align myself with Marcus, the disgraced colleague, because he had the fragmented truth that Ethan couldn't give me. Serafina didn't waste time. Later that afternoon, an email circulated throughout the festival staff. Ethan had been temporarily suspended from his accounting job, effective immediately, pending an internal investigation into a minor inventory theft that had occurred 2 weeks prior. The timing was too perfect, the charge too flimsy. She was framing him, cutting him off from the festival and from me before I could get any closer to the truth. She was isolating her pawn. When I spoke to Ethan, his despair was palpable. It's a mistake, Anya. They're just trying to panic me. I didn't steal anything. But the suspicion in his voice was crushing. He saw the doubt in my eyes, even though I now knew he was innocent of that crime. His suspension effectively severed his access to the vault and destroyed his leverage. Serafina's calculated cruelty was masterful. My window of opportunity was shrinking to nothing. The police would soon be involved. I had to get the ledger now. I couldn't risk Marcus. He was too weak, too tainted. I had to go in alone. That night, equipped with the security code Marcus provided, a code Serafina had foolishly used for multiple locks, I approached the vault. My hands were steady now, driven by adrenaline and righteous rage. I bypassed the first lock, and the steel door hissed open an inch. Inside, the vault wasn't just a storage room, it was Serafina's private office. I found the hidden, encrypted digital ledger behind a loose panel, exactly where Marcus said it would be. It was the proof. But as I grabbed it, my hand knocked against a small, velvet-lined box tucked behind a stack of files. I opened it, my breath catching in my throat. Inside was a tiny, intricately engraved silver locket. It wasn't the proof of a crime. It was proof of a betrayal. The locket was engraved with a single, devastating date. A date 3 months after Ethan, and I had stopped our FWB arrangement. 3 weeks before I had gone no contact with my cheating ex. It was a gift from Ethan to Serafina, a desperate, last-ditch attempt to win her back. He hadn't just stuck it out with her. He had gone back, chasing her beauty and her toxicity one last time. He hadn't chosen me back then. He had only chosen me now, 5 months ago, when he was finally broken. The bitter truth hit me harder than any physical threat. I had risked my sanity and my future for a man who hadn't fully chosen me 7 years ago, and I was only his reward because his last, beautiful choice had failed him. Justice for Ethan was now tangled up with my need for personal, searing revenge against the woman who made him weak. The silver locket in my hand was a devastating piece of jewelry, a silent, mocking testament to the fact that I had never been his first choice, not even when our pasts overlapped. The date etched on the back, a date 3 months after our FWB ended, screamed the bitter truth. Ethan had tried to go back to Serafina. He had begged, he had offered her his commitment, symbolized by this locket, and she had rejected him. I wasn't the woman who got away. I was the consolation prize he settled for when the trophy finally broke. Instead of crippling me, this bitter, searing truth gave me a cold, terrifying clarity. My fight was no longer about saving a perfect relationship. It was about achieving a clean, complete, and utterly devastating justice. I wouldn't just save Ethan from jail. I would dismantle the woman who had used our deepest emotional wounds as tools for her financial crimes. I secured the digital ledger from the vault, the key to exposing Serafina's multi-million-dollar embezzlement scheme. But I couldn't just hand it to the police. Serafina was too connected. The exposé had to be public. It had to be delivered with such theatrical force that her reputation, her most prized asset, would be instantly and irrevocably ruined. I used my old connections in the festival's media and marketing team. As a former model and musician, I knew how to command a stage. I secured a final, unscheduled slot on the smaller stage for the closing ceremony, disguised as a special presentation from one of the sponsors. I spent the next agonizing hours preparing my digital presentation, weaving together Marcus's fragmented proof, the cryptic messages from the burner phone, and the cold, unassailable data from the ledger. Every slide was a nail in Serafina's coffin. The moment arrived. The closing ceremony was in full swing, the crowd immense, the air thick with anticipation. My heart didn't pound. It froze, rigid and sharp. I walked onto the stage in a stylish, cinematic black outfit, a professional image that belied the fury coursing beneath my skin. I started innocently, talking about the importance of integrity in art and finance. I had the spotlight, I had the audience, and most importantly, I had the undeniable, objective truth. This festival, I announced, my voice amplified and steady, is built on passion, but it has been systematically drained by a parasite. I clicked the remote. The massive screen behind me lit up, showing the first slide, a side-by-side comparison of Serafina's official festival salary and her unexplained offshore bank transfers. For years, I continued, my voice gaining force. One person has been exploiting this community, using sophisticated shell companies and insurance fraud to steal millions. She is not just a master of manipulation in love, she is a master of manipulation in crime. The crowd murmured, their attention instantly captured. I clicked to the next slide, which showed the decoded text message. Meeting at the vault. 3 a.m. Bring the ledger. Suddenly, the backstage door burst open. Serafina appeared, her perfect composure finally shattered. Her eyes, usually glacial, were wide with incandescent rage. She realized what I was doing and, blinded by her own arrogance, she made her mistake. "Stop this," she shrieked, racing across the stage floor, shoving staff members aside. "This is slander. She is emotionally unstable. She is a liar." Her physical confrontation was the chaos I needed. As she lunged for my remote, trying to physically tear the truth from my hands, I stepped back, calmly pressing the button one last time. The final slide projected onto the screen. It was a single, devastating sheet from the digital ledger, clearly showing the final, massive wire transfer into Serafina's private account, signed with her digital key, proving the embezzlement beyond a doubt. The accompanying graphic showed the criminal statutes she had violated. The struggle intensified. Serafina was vicious, clawing at my arm. I fought her off, protecting the evidence while keeping my eyes on the crowd. The noise went from murmuring to a collective, horrified gasp. The audience saw the beautiful, perfect woman for what she truly was, a cornered, panicked criminal. Then, the piercing sound of sirens. Marcus, my shaky ally, had done his part. He had alerted the authorities moments before my presentation started, giving me the cover I needed. Plainclothes officers, blending in with the security team, quickly moved onto the stage. I let go of Serafina's arm. The police moved in, reading her rights as they cuffed her. She continued to scream, not accusations, but threats, her face a mask of impotent fury. Sweet victory. Serafina was publicly exposed, her reputation ruined, her crimes undeniable. Justice was swift, brutal, and visible to everyone she had manipulated. I stood on the stage, the adrenaline fading, my legs trembling. The crowd was silent, then erupted in chaotic chatter. Then, a figure burst through the police cordon, running toward me. It was Ethan. He looked relieved, yes, but also terrified. He didn't rush to hold me. He grabbed my shoulders, his eyes searching mine with a terrifying intensity. He didn't thank me. He didn't say, "You were right." His first, crushing question was, "What did you risk to do this, Anya? What did you risk?" His fear wasn't for himself. It was for the person I had become, a woman willing to break the law, violate trust, and court danger to destroy a ghost from the past. The victory tasted like ash. The police lights strobed violently across the crowd, painting the faces of the onlookers in chaotic flashes of red and blue. The silence that had followed Serafina's violent arrest was heavy, broken only by the crackle of the police radio and the ragged sound of my own breath. I stood on the stage, the digital ledger clutched in my hand, the silver locket hidden in my palm, a tiny, cold lump of truth. Ethan was still gripping my shoulders, his eyes searching my face, not with gratitude, but with a terrifying, raw fear. "What did you risk to do this, Anya? What did you risk?" His question wasn't about the law. It was about my soul. He saw the woman I had become, a hypervigilant operative, willing to violate boundaries, break into a vault, and set a public trap. He saw the trauma, not the triumph. "I risked everything," I whispered, the exhaustion finally hitting me. "I risked going back to the way I was 7 years ago, a person who couldn't trust, who needed to control the narrative to feel safe. I risked you." We left the festival grounds not as heroes, but as survivors carrying heavy, unspoken baggage. Ethan had been immediately cleared by the authorities. The ledger was the irrefutable proof of his innocence, but the experience had shattered his trust in my methods. The entire drive back was conducted in a terrible silence, heavier and more complex than any fight we could have had. Back in the apartment, the conversation finally began, stripped of all artifice. It was the moment of reckoning, fueled by the locket I finally placed on the table, the engraved date facing him. "This," I said, my voice steady despite the shaking in my core, "was found in the vault. A gift from you to her, 3 months after our FWB ended. Tell me the truth, Ethan. You tried to go back to her, didn't you? After all the therapy, after all the promises, you tried to choose the familiar misery one last time." Ethan stared at the locket, his handsome face crumbling. He didn't deny it. He sank onto the sofa, the weight of 7 years of lies crushing him. "Yes," he admitted, the word a painful rasp. "I went back. She had the beauty, the pull, the kind of soul-deep toxicity that felt like home because I was broken. I couldn't accept that you, this strong, healing, amazing woman, could actually want me. I was terrified of real love, Anya. Terrified of the honesty you demanded. I chose the beautiful, familiar pain of Serafina because it felt safer than the hard, bright challenge of you." He confessed that Serafina had rejected him again, cruelly, telling him he was too vanilla and boring. That final rejection, he said, was the real reason he broke off contact with her, not some sudden moment of clarity. It was only then, months later, after he had spiraled into his own breakdown, the tragic situation that reunited us, that he finally understood what he had lost in me. I looked at him, and the final piece of the puzzle clicked. His earlier dismissive comment, "Yeah, she has lots of issues," wasn't a sign of lingering love or desire. It was a profound, bitter regret. It was the lament of a man who had wasted his most precious years chasing a mirage of beauty that had no substance, missing the real thing that was me. The healing. I finally understood that I was not the consolation prize. I was the person he had been too broken to choose back then. And I was the person he fights for now. The bitterness over the locket faded, replaced by a deep, weary empathy. We were both damaged goods, scarred by betrayal and self-doubt. Our new relationship wasn't perfect because it was built on a perfect past. It was perfect because we were finally honest about our imperfect, messy, and traumatized beginnings. I was autistic, I admitted, finally using the word out loud, and in those moments of insecurity, I misunderstood your defensiveness as proof of her lingering power. I was spiraling. I broke your trust because my trauma told me I had to investigate to survive. That cannot happen again. Ethan met my gaze, his eyes clear for the first time. It won't, because we're going to build something stronger than fear. We are going to accept that the trauma is a scar, not a chain. The bittersweet victory. Serafina was in jail, facing serious federal charges. The integrity of the festival was restored, and Ethan was cleared, his career intact. The nefarious plot was entirely dismantled, and the villain was punished. The personal reward was even greater. I realized I was not just the one who got away from Ethan, but the one who got away from my own self-destructive past. I had stared the ghost of my trauma in the eye, and instead of spiraling, I had taken decisive, if complicated, action. Justice had triumphed. The villain was punished, and the heroes were rewarded, not with a fairy tale ending, but with a real, hard-earned, and honest beginning. The final scene is not one of passionate reunion, but of quiet, adult commitment. We chose a new path, built on the mutual understanding of our deep-seated flaws and the promise that we would always choose honesty over fear. We weren't perfect, but we were real, and that was finally enough. We walked out of the apartment building together, not as heroes, but as two scarred people choosing a difficult, but beautifully real, future.